Hello, and welcome to my guide on installing Houdini and accompanying plugins, as well as setting up some advanced tools to help switch versions of Houdini. I'll start out by showcasing how to install Houdini by installing the daily build first. I'll move to licensing and debugging any licensing issues that can follow. Afterwards, we'll start by setting up our default Houdini workspace and how to make it ready for effects and tool dev work. Moving on, we'll start installing our custom tools, such as OpenColor and FFmpeg, and here I'll show the Windows environment setup. Once those are installed, I'll showcase how to install Arnold, Redshift, RenderMan, V-Ray, and Octane for Houdini, using the package system. We'll be doing some debugging in these cases, as not all plugins will run on the latest daily build of Houdini, and we'll show how to switch by default using the package system. Finally, we'll round off by showcasing how to make a custom context menu for shortcuts and hip files, by diving into the registry and finding out exactly how it works. I hope you'll enjoy this video, and I appreciate any feedback. It's been a long time since I've had a proper advanced tutorial like this, so I thought it'd be nice to showcase this workflow. To start out, I'm going to download the daily build of Houdini. As you can see, I have all the tabs open with all the tools that I'm going to be grabbing for us. To get Houdini, we go to the side effects website and go to Get and Download. Scrolling down, I will now select the daily builds. As we can see here, we have Python 3 set up by default. I'm going to unselect it, as the plugins I'm going to be installing don't currently support Python 3 and instead support Python 2.7. This is an issue, and one that I hope will be addressed in the future. But for now, I'm going to download the latest daily build for Houdini. Okay, so my Houdini versions have been downloaded. I've downloaded the daily build of 18.5, the production build of 18.5, and the production build of 18.0. Currently, I'm just going to showcase installing 18.5 because the workflow is the same for the others. I've also gone ahead and disabled the Windows UAC so that no annoying admin logins will show up. In here, I'm just going to click Next and Agree. From here, I want to install the industry file associations. This will set the registry, which we're going to be using later on. I'm also going to enable the side effects labs. I only really need to enable this just once, thankfully. I'm not going to install HQ, the client or the server, as these can be quite difficult to set up and takes into consideration whether you're using a single computer on a network, or a single computer on a server. I'm also going to install the plugins that come with Houdini for Unity, Maya, Unreal, and Max. And then I'm going to leave everything at the defaults. Okay, now that my Houdini 18.5 daily build has been installed, I'm just going to showcase where it has installed to. So I'm going to go to my C drive, under Program Files, under Side Effects Software. And here we're going to see two folders. We've got the Side Effects Packages and Houdini 0.5.506. Side Effects Packages is the Side Effects Labs system, and it used to be installed on Documents, but now it's been moved over to the Program Files. If we dive inside of our Houdini 18.5 folder, we're going to see we have a few more things here as well. We have the bin, where we get all the EXEs that are listed. Under Custom, we also have all the DSOs, or the library files. These are used for creating custom plugins. Here we have the engine, which is used mainly for the plugins that we could install for 3ds Max, Maya, and so on. We also have Houdini packages, Python 2.7, the Qt, and the Toolkit. The Toolkit is also used for creating plugins. The Qt library is basically the Qt library, which is what Houdini primarily runs on. Python 2.7 is installed by default, as I selected the Python 2 version, and whenever we run a script inside of Houdini, we're going to be running it with Python 2. We can also pass arguments into the Houdini startup by right-clicking on our Houdini 18.5 file here, and under Target, we can add another double quotes in here, and write in a Python file. And then upon execution, Houdini will execute that Python file. We also have the Houdini folder here. This is quite important, as when we first boot up Houdini, we're going to get a folder inside of our documents called Houdini 18.5. And in here, we're going to get a variant of what is inside here. This one has all the defaults. However, the ones that are installed inside of the documents are the ones that we set for the user. These differ because we don't want to be able to have to, say, run as administrator every time we run Houdini, because then we will be making changes on the program files. So to help out, SideFX has placed it in the documents folder. So let's boot up Houdini. And the first thing that's going to happen is a license manager is going to run. I have not yet installed my licenses, but what I want to do is I want to say I have a paid license for Houdini. I do not want to select I want to use SideFX as my license server. The reason for this is that I have known the SideFX license server to go down or my own internet to go down, and then I can no longer access Houdini or the functionality that comes with it. So I prefer to have my license local. I'm going to hit next, and I'm going to go to license settings. And under here we're going to see we have something here called desktop-rc47hrl. If we go to our server information, we can also see we have this is called our server name. Now I've set up my server name as a custom name in the past, so I'm going to want to change the server name. The only way we can do this is by going to this PC here, right-clicking in the open folder section here and going properties. And we can see here that our computer name is the same as the server. So I'm going to go to change settings. I'm going to say I want to rename this computer, and I'm just going to call it under what the original server name was called. In my case, this was Wild. It's going to say that you must restart your computer, and I'm going to do this later on. Okay, I've restarted my computer. Now my server name is now set to what I set it beforehand, which was Wild. I'm now going to run Houdini again and open up the license server. Okay, it took some time for the Houdini license manager to actually start up, but it started up now. The reason it took some time is because it couldn't find the host name. So I'm going to hit close, and it's going to say this license server is not running. To start, I'm going to go to File and going to say Change License Server. Then I'm just going to hit Local Server. It's going to change the name to the name that I've set my computer to. I'm going to go to the server information, and it's going to say it is running, but there are no current license installed on the server. So let's go start by installing some licenses. To start out, I'm going to log in. Okay, now that I've logged in, I want to now get my licenses. I prefer to manually install these. So I'm going to go to File and manually enter keys. Then I'm going to go back to my SideFX login here, click on my username, and select Services. Then I'm going to say Manage my licenses. And then I'm going to see that I have 3 here that are currently redeemed. I'm going to click on the first one, and it's going to give me 3 keys. The first being my server, the second being the license for Houdini 18.0, and then an upgrade to 18.5. I'm going to copy these one by one and place them into the license keys here. And then I'm going to hit Accept. Now we can see that the server is now running, and we have installed the keys successfully. I'm now going to do the same for the other 2 entitlements, which is my Houdini Indie and Mantra. I no longer need to install the server now, so I'm just going to select the license and the upgrade. Okay, all 3 keys have now been installed. I can now close my Houdini license server. And I can now run Houdini. Okay, now that Houdini is running, I'm just going to say no thanks to the participation. And I want to close this show on startup. I'm also going to close the Houdini console and then just close Houdini overall, because I want to showcase a few issues that the licensing can have. So, to begin with, if we go to our C, where is the license server currently running? Well, this will be under Windows, System 32, and then under the name, SES. And we can see here one with the Houdini logo. This is our Houdini license server. If you're interested to find out where the license has actually been installed, that will be under Windows, and then Keys. we have 4 things in here. First one, the main one that we want, is the licenses. We can open this up with our preferred editor of choice. For me, this is going to be Notepad++. And if we look at here now, we can see we have the server and the licenses installed, as well as the accompanying upgrades. Sometimes you may want to delete this to get rid of all the licenses, if you want to reinstall the licenses, as sometimes the licenses can overlap with one another. If you're still having trouble with the Houdini license, you can go to Program Files, Side Effects Software, Houdini 18.5 or your install, go to the Houdini folder and scroll all the way down to where we can find the licensing.opt. Right-clicking and opening that with our notepad of choice. In here, we can set our licensing mode and our local validator directory. These are very helpful in the case where some licenses may not see the licensing server, or you have changed licensing servers. This is just a hard reset. Okay, now that we've booted up Houdini for the first time, we can see we have a Houdini 18.5 in our documents. If we dive inside, we can see we have a whole list of preference files and a few folders here as well. I want to quickly make changes to my Houdini dialogues, setup, and shelf tools. So I'm going to do this by removing the first shelf here, as in the lights, camera, and I'm going to make a new shelf. A new shelf set. Inside this, I'm going to add the lighting and a few other ones that I may want. So I'm going to add the side effects labs, the default lights and camera, and the container tools. I'm then going to remove this shelf set from the tab. Finally, I'm going to save this shelf. I'm going to edit shelf and giving it a proper name. Hit accept, and then I'm going to remove the create and refine. Finally, I'm going to move my display or my scene view over, and I'm going to get rid of the parameters, the tree view, material, and asset browser. And then split this left to right and change this to parameters and undo the lock icon. Finally, I'm going to lay down a geonode. I'm going to lay down a box. And under my view, I'm going to say dim unused nodes. This is only really helpful when you are doing debugging student files or another person's file, but I like to keep this as default. Finally, I want to just remove a few more things. For this, I'm going to hit D on my keyboard over the scene view. And with this, I'm going to go to my geometry and turn the volume quality from normal to high. Then I'm going to go to my scene view and up my anti-aliasing to about 16 times. With the view nodes here, we have a clipping plane. We can have the near and far clip planes with a minimum home size of 0.01. Now, if you're going too close, you can always go in here and say near the clip plane and change this to a very small number, and this to a very large number. However, keep in mind that if you change this to a very small number, you should also make this one a relatively smaller number as well. So if I set this to 0.001, like so, I would set this to be about 1500. This is because the clipping plane isn't always able to render everything. But for now, I'm just going to set it to near and far clip planes. Finally, I'm going to go to my background, and I'm going to change it from light to grey. Then I'm going to go to my texture, and I'm going to set my 3D and 2D textures to full HDR. I'm going to keep my limit resolution on here because I like to override the resolution with other nodes. You also have a texture cache size. If you are seeing flickering with your volumes, you can just set this higher. However, keep in mind this is limited by your GPU memory. We also have an optimized part here. However, I don't need to do anything about this. I'm then going to save this as the default. Finally, I'm going to get rid of my composite view and my motion effects. And then I'm going to, on my build part here, I'm going to say save current desktop as, and I'm going to set it as primary and hit save. Finally, I'm going to go to my Edit, Preferences, General User Interface, and in my Startup in Desktop, I'm going to change from Build to Primary, and hit Accept. And then I'm going to close. And now when I run Houdini again, we're going to find that all my defaults have been set up properly. Now you may be wondering why I set up my scene view to black and white. And this is because I want to override the color with a custom node, with a custom color I mean. To do so, we're going to figure out how this is set up to the program files version. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my file browser, go to my C drive, and go to where Side Effects is currently installed. I'm going to go to my Houdini folder, and I want to select my config. And here we can see we have 4 different files here. We have 3D scene colors, black and white, dark and light. So I'm going to select the black and white, hit copy, and then go to my 18.5 folder in the documents, go to config and paste it in here. Finally, I'm going to open it up and edit it. Here I want to change the background colors. And we can see we have the background color here and background bottom color here as the very top parts here. I'm just going to copy and paste a default setting that I already have. And hit save. Finally, I can now start up Houdini, and what will happen is the config in this documents folder will override the one from the program files, as we can see here. My next step is I want to showcase how to install OpenColor, or OCIO for short. To do this, I just type in OpenColor IO into the documentations, and I want to go to the configs. From here, I can just say code and download zip. Okay, now that I have downloaded OpenColor IO, I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to install it into my C drive. I like to make a custom folder for this, so I'm going to go to my C drive here, make a new folder and call it custom. Diving inside, I'm going to make a new folder here and call it OCIO. With plugins, I'm going to make a plugins folder as well, and I'm also going to make FFmpeg. Inside my OCIO folder, I'm going to click inside of my configs here, grab everything and drag it into where I've made the folder. Okay, now that we have set up OCIO, we now need to install it. To do this, we want to go to our Start menu and type in env, and we want to edit the system environment variables. We do this, we go to System Properties, under Advanced, and select Environment Variables. In here, we can see that I have 3 variables under the user and several already under the system variables here. The system variables are what come by default, and we have something in here called path. Path is something that, when run, will always be included in the main setup. As we can see here, we have system root system32. So if I wanted to, I could go to anywhere. So it's here, do a %sign and type in system root %sign and hit enter. And then I'm going to go to my Windows folder where the system root is located. If I also wanted to, I could go to my command, and if I type in path, we're going to see all the path variables that Windows come with by default. As we can see here, we're going to have path system32 all the way across. And then finally, we're going to have some user variables. For me, this is just going to be my C Windows apps. So, what we want to do is we want to make a custom environment variable. So when we want to run it, all we need to do is type in this variable name. So I'm going to say new, and I'm going to call this OCIO in all caps. And then I'm going to browse for the file. I'm going to go to where I have installed OCIO, and in here I'm going to say ASUS 1.0.3. Select it and select the config.ocio and hit OK. Then I'm going to hit OK again and OK. To check if we've installed it correctly, I'm going to run Houdini. And straight away we can see a difference in the scene view. But to really test it, I can go to my render view here, and under this little toolbar I'm going to select it up to show the color correction bar. And here we can see we have the ACES installed correctly. Following along with the OCIO install, I also want to install FFmpeg. To do this, I'm going to go to FFmpeg on Google and select download. I want to get the Windows one, and I'm going to get it from the gian.dev. All I need to do is scroll down, and I want to get the git.full. Once we have downloaded it, I'm going to open it up. I dive inside FFmpeg, and we can see we have several folders plus a readme. We have the presets, documentation, and we have a folder called bin. I'm going to dive inside here and select all FFmpeg, ffplay, and ffprobe, and go back to where my custom folder is. Then I'm going to dive inside of FFmpeg, and drag and drop these three files into there. What I want to do is be able to add this to the path variable, so that when I go to my command line and type in ffmpeg, then ffmpeg will actually run. To do so, I'm going to close my command line, go to my environment variables once again, and instead of putting it into this path variable here, I just want to set it as my user variable. So I'm going to double click on my path, and I'm going to say new. Inside here, I'm going to say browse, and browse to where the folder is I want it to be. And then I'm going to hit OK, OK, and OK. Now I can run my command line, type in ffmpeg, and when run, we can see that it is now running. Now I'm going to start by installing Arnold. To do this, I've gone to the Arnold download section and I've already signed in. I'm going to scroll down and I want to get Houdini 18.5, basically the latest. I'm also going to get Houdini 18.0. Okay, I've now downloaded Arnold, plus I've installed Houdini 18.5, the production version, and 18.0, the production version. I'm going to start by just installing 18.5 for now. I want to select Extract Contents Only, and go to Browse, and go to My PC, Local Disk C, Custom, and go to Plugins here. And then I'm just going to say Select Folder. I'm going to hit Next, accept the licensing, and then Install. I'm going to hit Finish, and now I'm going to navigate to where Arnold has been installed. We're going to my C, Custom, under Plugins. We can see we have a few folders and files here already, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this. I'm going to go into this folder and I'm just going to rename this Arnold 185, like so. And then I'm going to delete the rest. I'm going to do the same for 18.0. Okay, now that I've finished that, I'm going to go back to where my plugins haven't been installed, and I'm going to delete everything except for this folder once again. I'm then going to rename it to Arnold 180. We dive inside, we're going to see a similar setup to what the Houdini folder or Houdini 18.5 folder had inside of the documents. To start out, I'm only going to work with Houdini 18.5 for now. So I'm going to copy this location for starting, and I'm going to make an environment variable of this. So I'm going to say env environment variable, and like OCIO here, I'm going to make an environment variable as well. I'm going to paste in the location, and I'm going to call it Houdini Arnold 185. I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to do the same. I'm just basically going to duplicate it, but link to the other folder. So I'm going to say Houdini Arnold 180, and then just say 180 instead. But now what I want to do is I'm going to go to my documents and I'm going to go into my Houdini 18.5. The package system is basically a JSON file. So I'm going to just make a new folder and call it packages and dive inside. And here I'm going to start up my Visual Studio Code because it's easier to see. So currently, if we start up Houdini 18.5, the only plugins that should run is just the Side Effects Labs. I want to install Arnold on here. So to do that, I'm going to go File, New File. I'm going to start out by making a JSON file, like so, by putting square curly brackets in here. I'm then going to hit Save, and I'm going to go to my Documents, Houdini 18.5, Packages, and I'm going to call this Arnold.json. And now there are a few variables that we need to have. We need to set, firstly, the environment variables, which are variables that the Houdini package will look through. We also have a path variable, where Houdini Arnold is going to look for the basics, that basically is going to be looking for a similar setup to this. And the other variable that we want to set up is where the actual EXEs or DLLs are set up. So let's start out. I'm going to make a variable called path, put it in quotes. I'm going to say a colon, and then I want to set it to the variable that I've already set. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say go back to my env to grab the correct name, and it's Houdini Arnold 18.5. I'm going to paste this in here. I'm also going to set a $sign here to showcase that this is actually a variable that we want. Then I'm going to hit a comma, and I'm going to say env for the environment. And this is going to be a list item, so I'm going to put in square brackets. And then inside here, I'm going to put in curly brackets as well. Then I'm going to make it a path variable in all caps. Inside here, this is also going to be in square brackets and as well as curly brackets. And here, I've got two options I need. I need to have the method of where it's going to be added and the value. So I'm going to say method first, and I'm going to say prepend, which means that this is going to be appended before everything else. And then I'm going to say value. And this is going to be the $sign Houdini Arnold 1.5 /scripts/bin. And then I'm going to hit save, and then I'm going to run. And we can now see that Houdini Arnold has now been booted up. Arnold can take a little while to load because it's trying to check the licensing server. However, I don't have any licenses installed for this currently. And as we can see, we have Arnold installed. I'm going to hit close, and I'm going to add one more variable here to just disable this package. I'm going to say enable false. So now this won't be run, so that when I start up Houdini 18.5, Arnold will no longer be run. There we go. Okay, let's continue by installing Redshift. I've already logged in. I'm going to go to my downloads, and I'm just going to download the Windows installer. Now that that's been downloaded, I'm going to run it and just agree to all the defaults. Here we can set which plugins are going to be installed. I don't have Maya, Max, Softimage, Cinema 4D installed, but Houdini, the Hydra Delegate, Katana and Blender are already going to be installed along here, as these plugins are not needed to have a separate installer made. So I'm going to hit next. Once Redshift has been installed, it asks if you can set the time delay to above 60 seconds. I'm going to say yes and hit next. Finally, I'm going to run the Redshift licensing tool and actually just license my software. I can do this by saying activate license, and it's going to ask where my license key is. I can grab this by going back to where my Redshift is, going to my dashboard, and go to licenses, and then just copy over my license. Okay, now that my license has been activated, I'm going to hit back and just close. And now I want to install Redshift for Houdini. To do this, I'm going to go to my packages system, I make my Houdini 18.5 folder, and go to my packages. And I want to make a new JSON file. All I'm going to do is I'm going to hit copy and paste and rename this to Redshift. And then open it up once again. So I don't want to install multiple different versions of this, as I can just use the versioning that comes with it by default. So I'm going to first start out by setting this one to true, and now we need to find out where Redshift has actually installed the plugins. Where they've been installed is if we go to my File Explorer, go to my C, and it's a folder that is hidden by default. So I'm going to say C, and then I'm going to say Program Data as one word, and hit Enter. And here we're going to see a few folders, one of them being Redshift. I'm going to dive inside here, and primarily I would like to set this up as an environment variable. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to say New, I'm going to say Redshift Install in camel casing. And then I'm going to say Browse Directory. Alternatively, because the browse directory cannot actually see hidden folders, I'm just going to copy and paste this variable in here. The reason I've made a custom variable here and not just call it Redshift is because I don't know if Redshift has already made a variable somewhere down the line that uses this Redshift, and I'm now currently overwriting it. So I'm just going to call it the Redshift install. Hit OK, and then inside here I'm going to copy and paste this over this here. I'm also going to say append instead. And finally, what I want to do is, instead of saying scripts, it's just going to go to the bin folder. Now, with Redshift, if we go to plugins, Houdini, we can see we have several different folders in here, all of which are attaining to the ones that we want to install. I'm going to hit OK on here to get rid of this. We can see we have a Houdini 18.0597 here and 499, but that's not here, and 506 is not here. If we try and run these, then Houdini will cry and Redshift won't actually work. So what we have to do is we have to go to the Redshift forums and grab the pre-built plugins. We can do this by going to the new version and selecting the new version here, scrolling down, and we can see that there's been a thread created for the custom Houdini build. If we scroll down, I'm going to grab both of these files. Okay, now that the two zip files have been downloaded, I'm going to open them both. Open up the Win64 version, go up to my plugins, and I'm just going to drag and drop this over here. And I'm going to do the same for the Houdini plugin. If we go into Houdini now, we now have 499. I'm going to make a copy of this and change it to 506. Then I'm going to close all these, and I'm going to go back into where Redshift is installed, the Redshift package is installed. What I want to do is I want to set it up so that it will take either of these two versions, so 18.5.499 or 18.5.506. And the way we can do this is that Houdini, when it starts up, it has these custom environment variables. The one that we want is something called $Houdini underscore version. We also need to make sure that we've got the correct path, so we're going to say plugins, Houdini, and then that should all we need to do. Now I'm going to start up Houdini, and we'll see if it's worked. Now that Houdini started up, we can see that we have a Redshift IPR here. So Redshift is now installed. Okay, now let's get started by downloading RenderMan. I'm going to get started by logging in, and then I simply want to download it. Now I'm going to run the installer, and I'm just going to let it install to the default location. I'm going to hit finish, and now I'm going to log in. Now I'm going to say show all, but I don't need any of these for now because none of these have been installed. So I'm just going to say the Pro server and for the 23.5, sorry, for Houdini. Okay, now we need to actually set up RenderMan to work. So I'm going to go back down to where I have installed packages, systems, and I'm just going to duplicate Redshift. And I'm going to call this RenderMan. And then open this up. So for RenderMan, we're going to need a few different things. Even though we are already setting an environment path variable, I want to set the path at the bottom here. So I'm going to cut, and I'm going to paste it after my square brackets and put a comma after the square brackets as well, as it is part of the list. Finally, I'm going to keep this the same, and I'm going to keep this the same. Inside here, I need to make two new variables. These variables are going to be custom variables so that when, like how I can go to my command line and type in OCIO, or at the very least type in ffmpeg, ffmpeg will actually start running. So Windows doesn't use the $sign, it uses the percentage signs instead. So now I can see that it is actually going to the right variable. I want to basically set up my own custom variables inside here, which is what Houdini and RenderMan will be running from. So for this, I want two variables, and I'm going to include these in curly brackets. I'm going to put a comma after both. I'm also going to select them both and just move them up outside of these curly brackets, as they want to be a part of this list. I'm going to call the first one rman3, so, and then I'm going to just direct it to where the RenderMan server is. In this one, I'm going to say rfh tree, which is the Houdini default install. Finally, down here, I want to say $sign in square brackets as well as we're in curly brackets, as we're referencing something we've made in here, and I'm going to say rman tree. Down here, I'm going to do something similar. So for this, I'm just going to say $sign rfh tree, and then I'm going to put in the version that I want. I'm not going to hard code it or make it fluid like I did for these. I'm also going to delete the comma. To find out what the variables are that we need, I'm going to make a new file explorer and just navigate to where Pixar has been installed, which is going to be C, Program Files, Pixar, and then we're going to see 3 different folders and 1 file. I want to get Pro Server and RenderMan. So for this, I'm just going to copy the Pro Server here, and I'm going to paste it under rman tree. I'm then going to go back, and I'm going to change my backslashes to forward slashes. I'm going to do the same. I'm just going to copy paste Pixar, and instead of the Pro Server, I'm just going to say RenderMan for Houdini. I'm going to dive inside here, and I'm just going to grab the latest one and place that in here. And finally, I'm going to enable this to be true. So now, currently, all that should be running is RenderMan. Let's load up Houdini and see if this worked. So right away, we can see we have a few problems with the RenderMan. This is because I'm using a daily build, not the production build. So I'm going to close, and I'm going to load up the production build instead. Once again, the specified module cannot be found. This is because the daily build, which has just come out, is, the production build which has come out is almost exactly the same as the daily build. Originally, I was using Houdini 18.5.408, so I'm going to backpedal to that one instead. Okay, I've reinstalled Houdini as the 408 version, which was released yesterday. Well, it was the main release yesterday. Today's release was the 499. And now, when we run it, RenderMan should now work with no errors. There we go. We're not getting any errors. And we can see a great ROP here. I can now go and hit render. And it will now render out a scene to me, even though the scene has currently got nothing in it. Okay. Now let's install V-Ray. So V-Ray has 2 installs that we need to do. The first being the license server. So I'm going to go to Downloads, and I'm going to select the license server. Once this has been downloaded, I'll then install it. I'm going to agree, go to install. Once it's installed, I now just want to log in. So I mucked up where my license and tried to log in because I forgot my password for a second there. So it's taken me to my local host, which is the license server. I then went sign in, and after signing in, I've now have all my renders, all my licenses that I can use. I'm going to go back to my downloads, I'm going to go back to software, go back to all products, and go see all products. Now V-Ray for Houdini is in here. If we can also go to a custom chaos group URL. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to say, instead of download, I'm going to put down Nightlies. After signing in, we're going to go down to the Nightlies version. However, here you have to request access to be given the Nightlies edition. Currently, all we are given is the stable versions. As you can see, some of these I do have the Nightlies for. So I'm just going to go back, and I'm going to hit the latest one here, which is Houdini 18.5.408. And then I'm going to download the zip. And I'm going to open it up, and I want to just drag and drop this entire folder into my plugins folder. So I'm going to go to my PC, C drive, custom, plugins, and I'm going to grab V-Ray. Then I'm just going to grab everything inside here and place it in here. Now, to install V-Ray for Houdini, you can either grab the documentation, packages, and grab this here, or you can write it out yourself. Let's just start by writing it out ourselves. So I'm going to copy and paste this, and rename it to V-Ray. And open it up in my code editor. I'm going to set render man back to false, and I'm going to set this one, keep this one as true. To start out with, we're going to need several different environments here. The first off, I'm going to make something called install root. I'm going to say install _root. This is going to be linked to where I've now placed the Houdini folder, the V-Ray folder. So I'm going to go down and grab V-Ray, like so. I'm also going to rename it to V-Ray for Houdini. Change these backslashes to forward slashes. I'm going to remove these. I'm going to put a comma here, and we're going to make a few more. First one is going to be called V-Ray app SDK. And this one is going to be where the install root is. So I'm going to say $, curly brackets, install root, / app SDK. I'm going to do the same. I'm just going to copy and paste this 3 more times. Instead of app SDK, I'm going to say OSL path. So, UI, DS path. Put too many H's in that one. And then this one here is going to be called VFH _ home. And then I just need to say VFH home here. Under here, I want to say UI. Under here, I'm going to keep the app SDK, and I'm just going to say bin. Ideally, I could have just put down this and just say bin is here as well. But I'm going to keep it like this for now. Now then, we also want to get the Python version. To do this, I'm going to say Python path is equal to. Now we're going to go to the install root. So $ install root / app SDK / Python. In here, I can either hard code or I can set it up to what I want it to be. So it's going to be Python, and I want to make sure that I've got the correct versioning from my Houdini. So I'm going to put in square brackets, installer, Python version, and then another square brackets, I'm going to say installer, Python minor. And then I'm going to make a comma, just so that nothing's getting errored out. Now then, In here, I have now the path. I'm going to set the path to append for now, but the other two I don't want to have them inside these curly brackets. So I'm going to get rid of this value. I'm just going to say method is append, and then I'm going to say $hfs /bin, semicolon, and then I'm going to add in V-Ray app SDK /bin. And I'm going to put a comma there so that it reads both of these. And then I'm going to add one more, which is going to be $ curly brackets. I forgot to put this in curly brackets as well, which is HFS. Wait, no. Yep, HFS. And this one's going to be VFH home /bin. That's VFX. I want VFH. Force of habit. Okay. Finally, what we want now is after this curly bracket here, is I want to add in a few more variables down here. So this one is going to be Houdini 13 volume compatibility. And I'm just going to set it to 1, comma here. I'm going to say HDF5 disable version check. Set that also to 1. I'm going to say the Houdini gallery path. It's going to be set to $ curly brackets Houdini gallery path, as well as the VFH home. This is so we don't overwrite anything. The semicolon here is so that we don't overwrite everything inside the Houdini gallery path already, which is why under path we're setting HFS, which is what the path already has. And then I'm going to say /gallery. One more, and this is going to be called VFH asset path, which is going to be a variable that will be given by V-Ray. It's going to be on square brackets mtlib, or the MATLAB, download dir /assets. And finally, under path, I'm going to set this inside of square brackets here, and I'm just going to say VFH home, like so. And now let's run Houdini. I'm going to run the production build, and now we can see that V-Ray has run. I'm going to hit render to make sure it is actually rendering. And it's going to say V-Ray for Houdini camera is not set. That's fine. So I'm going to make a camera. I'm going to go to my render view. I'm going to hit render. And now we can see that V-Ray has loaded up. The reason I set it to load up as the production build and not my daily build is because V-Ray won't work. Let's try this. And we can see we're having some bad operated bindings here. This is because of just how it's built. There's not really much that we can do to make it work, unless you want to try and dive into the code. So I'm going to set up a custom variable here that checks to see the version. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set this one to false for now. I'm actually going to set this one to true. And I'm going to set if statements. I'm going to say enable is equal to, and I'm going to put this in curly brackets and then a comma. And I'm going to say $Houdini version that's not equal, and then in small quotes, single quotes, I'm going to say 18.5.408. Semicolon, and I'm going to say false. So now, when I run Houdini 18.5, this should check this out and say, is the Houdini version 18.5? If it's not, just don't run. And we can see that something's gone wrong here, so let's try it again. I'm going to push this up to here, because it could just be an order of way it's going. And that was basically it. So now I'm going to go back up, and I'm going to try and run Houdini 18.5 here. And now we can see V-Ray is now running as well, but it wasn't running with the daily build. So this is a custom variable that we can set. It'd be nice if we can make comments inside JSON files, but I don't believe you can. But currently this is set to be true, but this is overriding the enable. This is overriding the enable, this is also as well. And we know that RenderMan doesn't like to work with 18.5.506. So let's set up the it to do the same, which is very easy to do. So I'm going to say enable, if it's this one, then turn it to false. I'm going to set this to true. I'm going to turn this to false. Then I'm going to run Houdini 18, the production build. And we can see that V-Ray is trying to run as well. So let's go back. What's happening here is this is overriding it as well. So I'm going to set this below it for now, because what's happening here is V-Ray is saying enable it to false, and then it's re-enabling itself. We don't want it to do that, so I'm just going to say just set it to false completely. And the reason it had these errors is because it was clashing with RenderMan. So there we go. It's recommended that you only have one plugin loaded at a time with these render engines, and if you run 18 the daily build, RenderMan and V-Ray should no longer work. There we go, we have no errors. So I've gone on to Octane now, and I've gone onto the demo version because I don't currently have a license for this yet, and I'm going to select the Houdini and download this. Okay, now that Octane has been downloaded, I'm going to open it, and I want to grab these two versions here. So I'm going to go inside my plugins, and in here I'm going to say Octane. I'm going to grab and drag these two over here, and then I'm just going to rename these. Double click, and we can see we have something very similar to what the other ones were set up as. So now let's install this into our Houdini. So I'm going to go to here, I'm going to put this down, and I'm going to set this to false, so that is always going to be disabled. Then I'm going to go to my Arnold, I'm going to make a copy of this, and I'm going to call this Octane. And then open it up in code. Now I want to set up Octane here as well, like I did with Arnold. So I'm going to say edit environment save variables, and I want to make basically a copy of this. So I'm going to say Houdini Octane 18.0. I'm going to go to the browse directory, go to my PC, and I'm going to navigate to where I've installed 18.0, like so. I'm going to make a copy, say 18.5, and I'm just going to say Houdini Octane 185, like so. I'm going to hit OK, and now I can just say Houdini Octane 185. Ideally, this is all we really need to do, except we just need to get rid of the scripts file here. So now let's run it by setting it to true, and let's run Houdini. Now we can see that Octane is actually indeed running, but it's saying we're having an error. I just need to download some extra drivers for this. Now Houdini opens up with Octane. Let's just check to make sure that Houdini can actually run with the daily build too. As we can see, Houdini can't seem to run it. Let's close, and let's just make sure that this is actually run as intended. I can open the IPR, and we're going to get a few errors because of just how Octane is currently set up. So I'm going to hit close, and now we can rest easy that Octane is actually running. However, like RenderMan and the other ones, this wasn't working with this. So I'm going to just copy and paste this code to make sure that it only runs if it's 18.5. I'm also going to set this to false for now. So now that I've got Arnold, Redshift, RenderMan, Octane, and V-Ray installed, let's start by making this a bit more advanced. So as you can see here, I've got 3 different shortcuts on the file browser. If we go to my desktop, we're only going to see 2. So I'm just going to delete both of these, and I'm going to delete this one. I'm going to go to my PC, program files, side effects software, and I'm going to go to my latest daily build because I prefer to run on the daily. And scroll down to where Houdini is found. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say send to desktop. And I'm just going to call this Houdini. I'm going to make a quick box, and then I'm going to hit save. I'm going to go to my desktop and I'm just going to say sample. And then I'm going to close. And I'm just going to test to see which version of Houdini is run when I hit sample. And currently it's running the daily build, which is what I want it to be. Okay. Now, to start out with, what I want to do is I want to make a bat file that will run upon certain commands. So what I want to do is I'm going to say this PC, I'm going to say go down to here, to my custom plugins, and I'll go into my plugins folder here. And now I'm going to make a custom bat file. So I'm going to go to my Visual Code, and I'm going to say File, New File. And I'm just going to get rid of everything in here for now. I'm going to say echo off, and I'm going to comment that out for now. However, it's not going to let me, so I'm just going to hit save. I'm going to go to my PC. I'm going to save it under plugins. I'm going to say run Houdini .bat. And now I can actually comment this out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my plugins folder here. I'm going to say command, and I'm going to say run Houdini main. And currently nothing's going to be run, which is good. What I want to do is I want to start up Houdini with the current version that I want it to be running. So I want to say, is it the daily build? Is it the other build? Or so and so on. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to say set current build is equal to $1. Now I'm going to change this to 2 in the future, but for now we're going to keep it at 1. And you'll see later, and you'll see why in a minute. After this is done, I'm going to say start /D, so that what it's going to do is it's going to close once it's done. I'm going to then go to the folder where Houdini is installed. I'm going to say Houdini.exe, and that's all I need to do. Let's figure out how we're going to write this variable, because it can change depending on where we've installed Houdini. So I'm going to go to my C, program files, side effects software, like so. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say %sign program files. The program files is a default environment variable that if I run in the command here, so say echo, it's going to go to C program files. And I'm putting this in brackets so that it will read the spaces in between here. I mean, not in brackets, it's going to be inside of quotes so that it can read the space there. Otherwise, it won't read it. I'm then going to say side effects software /Houdini, and here I'm going to say my Houdini version. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say $sign Houdini version, like that, and /bin. Now, if I start this up, it's not going to find anything because this is currently not set. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to re-enable this. I'm going to say current build is this one, so I want to say if $sign current build is equal to double quotes, it's equal to daily, just going to say daily like that, is on as all lowercase. Then I'm going to put in a curly brackets. I'm going to say set Houdini version to current Houdini daily, like so. Now this is going to be an environment variable, so I'm going to go back into my environment variables here. I'm going to say new Houdini current daily, and this one's going to be, if we take a look at where our side effect software is, this number here, which is 18.5.506. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to make some more. I'm going to say production. I'm going to copy this number, like so. And then finally, I'm going to say previous Houdini, like so. I'm not even going to say production. There we go, no spaces, and it's all there. Okay. So I'm just going to quickly make sure that I've remembered those variables. So it's called current Houdini daily, like so. Now when I run it, it's not going to like it. And what I need to do is I need to say bat daily. It says it can't find it. So let's just turn off this echo and see where it's actually trying to run it from. Okay, so it doesn't seem to be wanting to find this Houdini daily. A fix that we can do is we can go to my task manager, I can go to my explorer, and I can end the tasks. I'm just going to end both of them. Then I'm going to go to File, New Explorer.exe, and reboot Explorer. So now I'm going to go back, dive inside to where this bat file is. I'm going to say command, and we're going to see that some things are still not running. So let's just get rid of some of these spaces, because sometimes they do interfere with it. So let's try this one more time, but let's put this in quotes. And we can now find the daily. Okay. Now let's try and make it, set it so that it has a different one. So I'm going to do, instead of else, I'm just going to say if, and then another if. But to be honest, this is only going to be set when we run it from like a context window. So I'm going to say, instead of daily, I'm going to say pro, and then instead of daily, I'm going to say pre. So this one's going to be production build, and this one's going to be previous build. So I'm going to go back to my environment variables. I'm going to grab the production. So, and then I'm going to grab the previous Houdini, like so. Now what I can do is, instead of daily, I can say pre, and now Houdini 18.0 is now going to be running. And I haven't currently set up the defaults for this. I'm also going to get rid of this echoes. So now this is running, we can set up some more variables. Let's say that if we're running the daily, currently it does not matter if we're running the daily, the pro, or the pre, because we're going to say, hey, if we're running this, enable Arnold. I just want to enable the Arnold for this now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my to where I have my packages. I'm going to grab Arnold. I'm going to bring it in here, and I'm going to say the enable is going to be set to something completely different to this false thing here. So I'm going to keep this one as false because I want to keep it so that if I want to change it later on, I can. But it won't start if I just run Houdini normally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say enable, and it's going to complain because there's two enables now. It's going to say it's going to be overwriting one another. I'm going to say $enable Arnold does not equal small quotes enable, then false. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say, now we have in Python, and the reason I'm using a bat file instead of Python is because Python can crash at times, and I don't want Python to crash and then Houdini to crash. What I want the bat file to do is I'm going to set a number of commands in here, and I want it to say which plugin it's going to load. So I can say set load plugin equals $2. Now I can set this up to be whichever one I want it to be. So I'm going to copy this one here. I'm going to say if it is Arnold, then I want to set Arnold to be started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to here and I'm going to say enable Arnold. It's equal to false. Enable. Enable. Like so. So I'm going to say if current build is equal to Arnold, then enable. So if I run this now, it's not going to like it. Well, it is going to like it, but I'm going to say production build. So I'm going to say set it to pro. And then I want to set the next argument to Arnold. And currently this is not working, so let's debug why. So if enable Arnold is not set to enable, then set it to false. We are setting Arnold here, and we want to say load plugin instead of current build. My bad. So I'm going to say pro Arnold. Okay, so for some unknown reason, Houdini is starting Arnold. As we can see here, Kick is actually starting. However, the console is no longer showing up. This has probably got to do with my V-Ray. Although really it shouldn't be. Okay, but now we've got Arnold running. So let's do the same for the rest of them. So I'm going to set Arnold here. And I'm also going to set Redshift here. So say Redshift. And the reason I'm going to put those two here is because I know that these work with the daily, the production, and the previous version. However, the others, such as RenderMan, Redshift, and Octane, don't currently work with the daily version. So I'm going to limit that by copying and pasting this in here. I'm also going to paste it into here as well. But for now, I'm going to say Octane, RenderMan, and then V-Ray. I'm going to make sure that these all have the correct names as well. So that nothing is going to be overlapping. Ideally, I would just put this into one if, so it's saying if its current build is equal to pre, or if it's equal to pro. Sadly, we cannot do like an if or, we cannot do an if and, it would seem, so we just need to chain them like this. Now with V-Ray, RenderMan, Octane, I'm just going to copy and paste this in here. Like so. And now there's no way that the daily build can run the Arnold or Redshift, but the production or the previous version can run Arnold or Redshift if needed. Now then, what I'm going to do is I'm now going to set it up so that I can run this. So if I say Pro, let's say V-Ray for now. And we have to set up all these to be working currently. So, which ones did I check? I did Arnold. So now let's do V-Ray now. So I do need to make sure that this is being checked here as well first. It's a bit hard to figure out where the checks should be because these just overwrite one another. So what I'm going to do, however, with the way I'm going to set it up, this is not going to be a problem. So what I'm going to do is this is going to be enable V-Ray instead of Arnold. Copy and paste this again. This one's going to be for RenderMan. I'm going to get rid of this false setting here. It's just going to be false anyway. This one's an render man. And then finally, I just need to do this for Octane as well. Enable Octane. Now when I boot up Houdini normally, none of the plugins should load, and they haven't. However, if I go to, say here, I can say the production version and V-Ray. And now the production version of V-Ray is of Houdini is going to load, and V-Ray should also load as well. Now it looks like Kick is actually trying to run, so let's figure out where we might have gone wrong here. So currently both Arnold and V-Ray are running. Let's go back. Let's make sure in our environment variables that we don't have something called enable V-Ray or enable Arnold. We don't. Okay. So I'm going to go back. I'm just going to go back to where these plugins are installed. I'm going to make a new one. I'm going to say run Houdini main.bat. I'm going to say pro, and I'm going to say V-Ray. And ideally, what should now happen is just V-Ray should load. And yep, there we go. The reason the other one was working was because we're setting an environment variable in here, and each time we do that, this should actually be closing. But it's setting the environment variable to be Arnold as well. So this should be closed every time we run it. Okay. Now what we want to do is we want to make this have like an option menu. So to do that, we're going to go into the registry. So I'm going to say, open up the start menu, I'm going to say reg edit. Now there are a few different folders in here, or different keys as they are called. We've got classes root, current user, and local machine. Current user is the current user that we're working with. So if I go down to my current user, go to software, we have a little classes file key here. I believe as does the local machine does as well. However, we're going to be working directly in the classes folder. I also want to point out that in current user we have an environment folder here where we have set up all the current environments. To start out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of what this file is. And what this file is a .lnk or a .link. And I want to make a custom link file. I'm also going to add this to the, the reason I'm doing it to this link file is because it makes it easier to do this to these files here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, select here, I'm going to say .ln, and we can see we have a .lnk. So open this up, we see we have a few variables here, have a shellx. We see it has a default name under called link file, and so on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say export. I'm going to export into the main thing here. I'm going to call it linky. Okay. I'm going to close the registry here. And what I want to do is I want to rename this. So I'm going to go and open up WinRAR. And I'm going to navigate to where my desktop is. And then instead of this .lnk, I'm going to say .lnky. This is going to make the icon disappear. We're also going to keep a few of these things here too. Before I do this, I'm going to go back to reg edit, and I'm going to make a new key. And I've done it wrong, so I'm going to delete it because I want the new key to be in this class's root here. I'm going to say new.key. I'm going to say .lnky. I'm just going to close it. I'm going to reopen it. And we can see we have these two things here, .lnk and .lnky. So now if I open this up, we're going to see a few files here. Normally this doesn't happen. So I'm going to say .lnk. I'm going to say the default is, like here, we've got an lnk file. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to make the default lnky file, like so. And now when we right click, we're still getting the same defaults. Normally this will change. So I'm then just going to say .l. Actually, I'm just going to say hit L. And scroll down to where we have link file here. And I'm going to make a Basically, I'm going to make a copy of what this is because I want to keep everything the same. So I'm going to go export, and I'm going to say linky 2, like so. I'm going to close it, and I'm going to open both of these in Visual Studio. And then I've got a .lnk. What I'm going to do is I want to say edit, select, I want to say edit, replace. So everything that has a .lnk I should say, I'm going to say .lnky. And then I'm going to say replace all. Okay, once that's done, I'm going to go over to here. I'm going to grab this one. I'm going to say, I want to say replace .lnk file with lnky file, like so. I'm going to say all. And then over here, I'm going to set, instead of lnky file, I'm just going to replace this one as well. Like so. And now I can just keep these defaults. I'm going to run both of these. What should happen now is that this should bring back its icon, but it's not going to. We need to restart Explorer. So to do this, I'm going to go back to my details. I'm going to go to my Explorer and just end the task. Go to my file, new task, Explorer.exe, open. And now we can see we have this back again, and we have all the same defaults that we had. Okay. Now what we want to do is we want to make some custom context menus. So I'm going to keep these ones here for now. And I'm going to go into the regedit here. We're going to be making our own custom regedit file. But for now, we're going to keep this like this. And we want to edit some of these set in the shell X and the shell file here. So what I'm going to do is I want to say new key. I'm going to call this shell. Inside this shell, I'm going to make another one, a new key, and I'm going to call this advanced Houdini. And now if I right click, we're not going to see anything because we need to make the same above in the I'm making it into the link file. I want to make it into the linky file here. So I'm going to delete this. I'm going to say new key shell, new key advanced Houdini. Now when we right click, we now have an advanced Houdini, except this doesn't do anything. So what we're going to do is I'm going to keep the defaults for now. I'm going to make a new string value, and I'm going to call this subcommands. I'm going to leave it empty. I'm also going to make a new string value and call it MUI verb. And inside here, I'm going to call it advanced Houdini, like so. Now we're going to see that we have a little drop down arrow here appearing. We also want to get where everything actually is, where the location is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say a string value, and I want to get the logo or the icon. So the way I can do this is I can either go to shell X and figure out where the handler is, how it gets the logo itself. But right now, all I need to do is I just need to link it to where Houdini currently is installed. So I'm going to say icon. Actually, my bad. I'm going to call this icon. And I'm going to make a custom Houdini location. To do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my environment variables. So I'm going to be using the production version all the time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say custom Houdini location, like so. I'm then going to say program files, where the program files are, and if I go here, we can see it's defaulting to that. I'm going to say backslash side effects software /Houdini. And then I'm going to do another percentage signs, and I'm going to say current Houdini production /bin. And now we're going to go to here. We're going to hit OK. OK. And now I can do the $ Houdini current custom Houdini location, custom Houdini location, two forward slashes Houdini.exe. Now, I don't think this is going to work just straight at the bat, because normally this needs to be encapsulated inside of a quotes, like so. It's better to encapsulate in quotes if you're feeling like you're doubting it. Okay, so now that we have the advanced Houdini installed here, I'm going to have 3 versions. I'm going to say new key. I'm going to call this one shell, and I'm going to say new key Houdini daily 18.5. Actually, I'm just going to say Houdini daily. I don't need to have it. So once that's done, I want to make, so if I go down to here, I can see we've got Houdini daily here. Nothing's going to happen if I click it. I'm going to make another one. I'm going to say new key Houdini production, like so, and one more called Houdini previous. So if I right click it now, we've got Houdini daily previous production. We're going to need to order these later because I want the production to be above. But for starters now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new shell. I'm going to say Houdini daily plugins. I'm going to do the same for the production and previous. So I'm going to say new Houdini production plugins. Another one. So I'm going to say new key Houdini daily Houdini previous plugins, like so. And now I've got daily plugins, previous plugins, production plugins. And now I want to do a similar setup to how I've just done this. So each one should have their own little icon inside it, leading to the correct one that we want it to. But the plugins want to have a shell underneath them. So I need to make a copy of what these are. So I need to go into here. I need to make a new key, a string value. I'm going to say subcommands. Call a new string value. I'm going to say MUI verb. And then I'm going to grab this. And I want to set it to be Houdini daily plugins, like so. And now we're going to see that we have some stuff in here as well. I'm going to do the same for this one. So I'm going to say new string value, say MUI verb, open up Houdini production plugins, subcommands, and lastly this one as well. So Houdini, subcommands first, and then MUI verb. And I'm going to call it Houdini previous plugins. What I want to do now is I want to set it so that if I go here, I've got all these. I'm going to export this. So I'm going to say shell, advanced shell. I'm just going to say export. I'm going to select custom. And I'm going to load it up inside of my Notepad editor here. So we've got advanced Houdini, shell, daily. I want to set, so I don't need to set these anymore because this one's set. Let me set that. So those are all set already. However, I'm just going to go backspace because I want to grab the icon for all these. So Houdini daily needs the icon. This one also needs the icon, but this doesn't need the plugins anymore. This one also needs the icon. This one doesn't need the plugins. This one needs the icon, and this one doesn't need the plugins. However, they do need a shell. The plugins do need a shell. So I'm going to copy this down. I'm going to say Houdini daily plugins. So, and we're going to be making a new shell inside here. Inside shell, nothing's going to be there. but we need to have this for all these ones. So I'm going to say previous plugins, like so, previous, and then this one down here is also going to be previous production link, like so. Now this is going to give us a shell inside these. If I run it, thank you, then we're going to see that now these have now got the icons. If I right click, I can see they've all got the icons that I need. However, the plugins don't currently have the plugins as a drop down just yet, and these don't currently have a working default. So let's start by just adding all the plugins that we need and the plugins that we want. So let's go start with just the daily, because these are just two. We just need Arnold and Redshift. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to say Arnold, Houdini, Arnold, like so. And I'm going to make sure that the icons come with us. I'm going to keep these here, even though they're good. So if I make a change, this file is going to overwrite it. So I've got Arnold, like so. And ideally, you'd make custom icons for this too. So you would know which ones you're going to go to. So let's say Arnold and then Redshift. After these, I'm going to say command. So I'm going to go to here, and I'm going to say Arnold, command. I'm going to go back. I'm going to say Arnold, command. I'm going to showcase what this does right now instead of just running this. So if I go to Houdini Daily, I want to say under here, we've got a default, and I want to set the default, which is actually no, I want to set a new key called command, and this I'm going to set the default to. So the default I want to set it to is the bat file that I have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to where I've installed my bat files, which is in the custom plugins here. So I'm going to go here. So run houdini.main. But if I set this to go and I just say advanced Houdini run, ideally it should work, but it's not going to. So what I'm going to do is, because it's trying to run just C, so I'm going to add double backslashes here, like so. And I'm going to put this in a double quotes. I'm going to hit OK, and then I'm going to try and run. Now I'm going to try and run this again. It's still not really running. So this is because we need to have arguments being placed inside here. So the way we can do that, this one's going to be daily, as we know. And then I'm going to say nothing inside here. Okay. We can see a flash of that come up. And now Houdini Daily is starting. So let's try and make this work for the previous one as well. So I'm going to make a new key, and I'm going to say command. I'm just going to copy what this one was. So under the default, I'm going to say daily, and I'm just going to say 3 because this one's for the previous. Yet, and I'm going to make a new key, command, and adjust the default to be pro for the production value. Okay, now if we right click, we can go previous, and now it's going to start up 18.0. I can do the same for production, and this is going to start at 408. Okay, so let's make these changes reflect inside our registry file. And ideally, I would love it if we could make this syntax highlighted. Okay, so I've just went and installed a custom extension to make syntax highlighting for the bat file. So what I'm going to do is I've got the plugins here, like so, and I want to make sure that these the changes we've made here are reflected inside here. So what I'm going to do is under Houdini Daily here. So under Houdini Daily, I'm going to say command. And the default way of doing it is we're going to say at equals, and then this code here. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we have these running properly. So I'm going to grab this, copy this, and I'm going to paste it in here. And we're going to see a few issues with this. I'm going to say, put that there, like so. Put that there, like so. So that these are being escaped properly. Okay. So I'm just going to quickly make sure that this is changing properly. So I'm going to say run the custom one here. And we can see that it did change a little bit. So let's just quickly make sure that that's the one we want. So commands. So it's changed the forward slashes. So I don't want that. So I'm going to add a double in here, like so. And I'm going to run it again. And now we're getting that. And if I run the Houdini daily, now it's going to run. The reason I'm doing the double backslashes is because sometimes Windows doesn't like it. And if you've installed it into a location with spaces in the name, then this is going to fix that. Okay, so I want to do this for my previous one. So I'm just going to go down this, make a big lot of space here. So I've got previous, so previous, and this was going to be pre, like so. And then we've got one here for production. So let's call this one Pro. And I'm going to make sure that I'm doing this the production one. I'm going to make this go again. And there we go. That's now working. So now these ones, the production and previous and these ones are working. I now want to set up Arnold and Redshift to work as well. So under the plugins, we've got Shell, Arnold, Houdini, and these also need a command as well. So like how we've set up this one. So I'm just going to make some space here. And we've got Arnold command here, and I'm just going to make this command go to, so it's going to be daily. And instead of this, I'm going to say Arnold in here. And under here, and we're also setting it to Redshift, so I want it to be Redshift. I'm going to say Redshift. Okay, let's install that. Let's take a look. Now we've got Arnold and Redshift, so I'm going to load up Redshift only, because Redshift is a lot faster than Arnold. It's not working currently, so let's take a look and see why it might not be working. Let's go to the bat file. So it does want to be Redshift, so let's take a look at this. Redshift, and let's take a look at our registry here. Daily, Redshift, Arnold, and so on. So let's make sure it works with our bat file here. And Redshift isn't actually working for this one. So let's just figure out why Redshift isn't working. So let's go to packages, where our packages are installed. So packages, Redshift. And we can see that we haven't actually set up the variable that we want. So I'm going to go back to Arnold. I'm going to grab this here. And I'm going to say enable Redshift. So enable Redshift, like so. And now we run this, go daily plugins, Houdini Redshift. We can now see Redshift is downloaded. Okay. So it was just a quick bit of debugging there to figure out what went wrong. And now we need to do the same for the previous plugins as well. So what I'm going to do is I can really just copy and paste this, because the other ones are all going to be there anyway. So I'm going to copy and paste here, Arnold, and I'm going to make sure that I'm changing these appropriately. So pre. But we've also got 3 others that we can install, which is going to be the Octane, Redshift, and Renderman. So let's do that. So I'm going to copy these. This one's going to be Renderman. so. I'm going to call this renderman here, and renderman. Oops, no, this one wants to be, first one wants to be redshift, this one wants to be renderman. Okay, so that's renderman. Let's put in Octane. And then finally, let's place in V-Ray. Like so. And I'm just going to copy and paste all this for the production build as well. I'm going to make sure that this is going into production, not the previous version. And I will share all this code as well later on because it is quite a lot. So I'm going to set custom and go. Let's check our shell. So now, so we've got previous command. These have all now got a shell for V-Ray, Arnold, Houdini, and so on. So let's try it out. Let's go. I want to say production build with, so V-Ray is currently not showing up for some reason. Let's figure out why. So right click, production, we've got Houdini, Arnold, Octane, Redshift. However, we're getting them all in here anyway. So let's figure out why. Okay, after some Googling, it would appear that the maximum amount of subcommands that one shell can have is 16, which is a limitation that Windows has had since XP. So there is no really way around this, unfortunately. So what I'm going to try and do is inside this shell, because this shell needs less, I should say, I'm going to basically split these up into 3 different shells. We'll see if that can kind of, I don't think it will work though, unfortunately. Because if we count now, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, all under this one command. So let's try and add a second one. Let's go create new, my shell here, like so. And we can see we have a new my shell, but let's see if that's actually taken away from this. It hasn't. So we're going to do 3 different Houdini ones here instead. So we're going to bring up the Houdini dailies up into here. So what I want to do is I want to have my shell, which is going to be in here. I'm just going to rename this. I'm going to say Houdini daily. I'm going to make sure I name it correctly. And inside here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a command. Actually, I'm also going to add in a shell. So I'm going to say shell. And I'm going to say a new key. I'm going to say, let's say Houdini daily. Let's say Houdini. So if I right click, I can say Houdini daily. Nothing's going to show up because what we need to do is we need to say these subcommands. So I'm going to say new string value. I'm going to say subcommands. Right click now. We're going to get Houdini Arnold here. But I also want to say this command here. So I'm going to say new key is command. And now what I should be able to do is I should say start command.exe. It's currently not working, so let's figure out why this isn't working. Because right now I'd like it to be able to just open up this one. But I don't think we're going to be able to do that. So because this needs to be all in one. So I'm going to say Houdini daily is going to be under here. I'm going to say Houdini daily. So Houdini daily, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say new key. I'm going to say Houdini. And then I'm going to say new key Houdini Redshift, like so. So now when I right click on this, I can say Houdini daily and Redshift is all here. Now I want to add in the icon. So if I go back up to here, I'm just going to grab the icon that I was using previously. So I'm going to say string value, I'm going to say icon, paste it into there. And I'm going to do the same for these. It's a string value icon, paste them into here. Like so. Now we should have free Houdini dailies. I also want to add in a space divider, basically. The way I can do that is by adding it a command flag. So I'm going to go to my Houdini here. I'm going to say new key. I'm going to say command flag. I don't want this to be a string. I want this to be a D word. I'm going to say command flags. And I'm going to set it to about, let's see, I think I want to set it to about 40. Which is what this is going to be coming out looking like here. So when I right click now, what should happen is we should have a little divider here. Okay, so now I'm going to go back up and I'm going to make the similar changes to the ones I've had here. And I'm going to reflect that in this folder. So under shell, we now have something called Houdini Daily, which is what we want. Except we want to get rid of this advanced Houdini, so I'm actually just going to remove all this for now. I'm actually going to add in a MUI verb. I'm going to call it Houdini Daily, like so. But I want to get rid of all this for now, because I don't actually know. I want this one. So this is going into linking file shell under Houdini Daily directly. So under shell under Houdini, like so. Now what I want to do is I want to have something similar to this. So I'm going to get rid of this one, and I want to set this here, from this advanced Houdini back, like so. I'm also just going to remove everything from here for now. So I've got advanced Houdini, getting into the daily shell now, so daily here, and I want to remove this section because I'm just going to say to Houdini Arnold, this one is to Houdini Arnold as well, and this one is to Houdini Redshift, like so. Now if I run this custom, what should happen is these should now have commands applied to them. So this one's got daily, this one's got daily Arnold, and so on. So now I can start up Houdini, and Houdini Daily will now start up. Now I want to basically copy this. So I need to specify this as well. So I need to say create the shell first, and then I need to specify this one, which is going to be Houdini production. So actually no, I'm going to keep this daily like this, and I need to make the defaults here. So the default's going to be this. The icon is going to be this. So daily shell is going to be here. It wants to be up like that. I want to say MUI verb. It's going to be this. So we say MUI verb. It's going to be that. And finally, I want to set subcommands to be nothing. So I'm going to say subcommands equals nothing, like so. Now, what I also need to do is after this one here, so I've got this command, I want to set, because I've got this command flag, I want to set one more thing, which is going to be command flags. So I'm going to set it equal to a D word, semicolon 04, like so. Okay, I'm just going to run this again and make sure that nothing in here has changed to any significant degree. Hasn't. Let's take a look. Nope, still the same. So now I'm going to copy all this, and I want to do this for the others. So I'm going to copy this down, and I'm going to call this one production. so. And I call this one Pro and Pro. And I'm going to add that. So now we have production and daily. We are missing the logo for the standard Houdini, so I've missed that. So I'm going to re-enable it. And now if I go to here, now we have a daily production. This is all working. However, my D word part here is not. So let's figure out why this isn't working. So let's take a look. Production, shell, Houdini Arnold, Houdini. So it's not even being added. So let's figure this out. Alright, so this is on the command. I actually want this to be above this one. So now when we right click, we can now see that we've got this working here. So I'm going to say, I'm going to get rid of this one here. And I'm also going to say, so ideally what I could be able to do is I could make it say MUI verb. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to call it whatever I want. And we can see that it is reflected in the name change here. So what I should be able to do is I can say Houdini, and then I can put in here the environment variable. So I'm going to say production build, like so. It's not currently working. Let's try and figure out why it's not working. It would be nice if it did work though. So let's just try restarting Explorer and see if that might have been the issue. But I do not think it was. So it's not going to be it. That's fine. So I was trying to make it so that when I set the verb, it would just automatically grab the current version that we want. But it doesn't seem like it wants to do that. So let's just get rid of this. If someone in the comments would like to be able to tell me how you can do this, that would be greatly appreciated. So let's just quickly add the Arnold Redshift and the other plugins that we want for the production version. So let's quickly make sure that we know which ones we're getting. It's going to be Octane, Redshift, and RenderMan. Octane, RenderMan, and V-Ray. Sorry. So let's grab this. Space quickly. So this one is going to be called here. Let's make this one called Octane for now. Octane. And let's make sure that these are reflected here. Let's go RenderMan. And this one we're going to call V-Ray. Like so. I'm going to quickly add these. And then we can right click and we can see that we have these loaded. And if I say run, I can now just say V-Ray, and it shall now run Houdini production build with V-Ray installed. So let's just do one more thing, and let's just add in the previous version. Although to be honest, I don't normally like to run the previous version anyway, so I'm just going to keep this like this. However, the examples are the exact same, and I'm going to be including this registry file later on, if anyone wants it. Hopefully this part went a bit smoother in the edit, because there was a lot of me pausing and quickly checking on files to see if I was doing anything wrong. But overall, I hope I'm actually going to clean this up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of this advanced Houdini. I'm just going to delete it entirely. So now we've just got daily and production build. And then what I want to do is I want to do the same thing for this .hip. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to output this shell. Here, I'm going to say export to my shell right here. And I'm going to load this up in my code editor. And we're going to see we're going to have a lot of these things in here. And what I want to do is I want to, first off, I'm going to need to make a change. And that change is going to have to be that I need to add in an extra command. So if we go down to sample here, I'll showcase the I'll showcase this in one of them. So what I'm going to do is I want to find the .hip file, and for this one I'm going to do the .hip NC, I believe it is, LC. I want to do this with .hip LC. So .hip LC goes to Houdini Dalhousie. So if I type in Houdini, like so, we're going to see .hip LC, we're going to see a shell in here, and we're going to see an open command. So I'm going to make an extra one in here. And all I need to do is inside this is I'm going to say edit to replace, and I just want to replace it with this. I'm going to say replace all, then I'm going to say run, and now we're going to have these inside here as well. So now I can load them up with my Houdini daily. But what we're going to find is, I'm just going to load it up in the production version. But we're going to find an issue. Plus, it's going to be an error, maybe. And that is that we're expecting a cube in here, but nothing's running. All it's running is just a new version of Houdini. If we open it normally, what we should get is the default. So we should get this cube here. So what's happening here? If we go to this open command here, and we go down to command, and we look at, and we open this a bit wider, we can see that it has this %1 thing here, which is the command that line that's taking in. And we need to account for that inside our bat file. So let's go back to where our bat file is currently installed. I'm going to place this in here. And instead of putting it in here, I'm going to set this to 2, this to 3. And I'm going to say set all to %1. And then after this, I'm going to say set all. So I'm going to say all, like so. And now, what I need to do is I need to update this to make those changes. Update my file here. So I'm going to go to the shell here. I'm going to say after it says daily. So after here, I want to make the change. So I'm going to say so. And I'm going to say %1. And that's the change that I need to make. So I'm going to copy this, paste it into all of the items here. And once that's done, I can now go into add it. And now I should be able to say open up with daily with the Houdini. And it should now open up the file. And as it has, as you can see. Let's do it with a production build. It's going to come with an error this time because this was saved with the daily build, not the production build. There we go, we've got an error, but it's now working. Okay, so now all we need to do is make these changes for the rest of them. And all I need to do here is I'm just going to copy and paste this. And I'm going to make this file publicly available, as I said. And I want to change this from a .hiplc to a .hip and .hipnc. So I'm going to grab this part here. I'm going to say place, and I'm going to say Houdini.hipnc, like that. I'm just going to place each one. Like so. So now I've got hipnc. Scroll down. And with this one here, I'm going to just say .hip. Like so. I'm going to say selection replace dot hip. There we go. Now I can just run this, and we're going to see that hip LC now has my Houdini production values. Hip NC now has these, as well as everything else. So now it all works. Okay, so there was a lot of back and forth in this last part of this tutorial, with me checking the documentations of Microsoft Windows to see if there was something I was doing wrong. So I'm sorry if the edit turned out weird or mismanaged a bit, but hopefully this showcases just how to set up a more advanced version of this. I'm going to be releasing this tutorial as a blog post as well, so it's a bit more confined and concise. And I'm also going to be releasing these settings and basic tools to what I've done. So I really hope that that helped somebody out there if they wanted to have a more advanced setup. Also, with this method, you can also create another bat file that auto creates, that maybe runs a Python file which auto creates documents and files and set up the folders for you wherever you need them to be, which will be very handy down the line for making production files and so on. But hopefully that helps, and hopefully that helped get a greater insight into the registry in here. The registry is quite handy, but if you're not ready, or if you don't know exactly what you're doing, then it can lead to a lot of headaches, as you probably saw. But this is currently working. I've got the daily, pre-production, and the production working perfectly, and I can now go and help people. And if they say, oh, I've got Arnold installed, I no longer need to go into my packages and re-enable something, I can just right click and just go into here like that. So thank you so much for watching. Any feedback, or if you've followed this long, then I would love some feedback on this. Thank you so much, and I shall see you next time.